There is nothing like deciding to get started making videos and trying to navigate through which video camera you should purchase. And while you're so excited to get started on learning the ropes of filmmaking, it can be a very daunting process, especially with all the new terminology or even just trying to figure out the best gear to get with the cameras just to get started, not even to mention the price of the cameras. But for my 100th video on this channel, I wanted to do a video where we talk about the bare minimum setup for the Pocket 4K for those with a really small budget who really want to get into filmmaking. I get it. I was there when I got started and was just looking to get my foot in the door with a decent but affordable setup and just to get experience on a cinema camera. But unlike a lot of people who tell you that you have to add on $1,000 to $2,000 to the price of the Pocket 4K just for accessories and equipment like a cage system or, an external monitor, or, oh, you got to buy cine lenses, or, oh no, you have to buy an adapter to go to EF. Otherwise, you shouldn't even think about trying to buy this camera because you're not ready for it. I believe there are ways to use this camera in a minimal setup to keep costs low, get great footage, and be able to work with a cinema camera. And the initial price of the Pocket 4K is $12.95 currently, or you can buy one on Adorama for about, $10.95. We're going to keep all of our recommendations here for this minimal setup under $500 and add some tiered options that we will link to in the description below. Now, when you first buy a camera, what is the first thing you think about getting next? Typically for me, it's a lens, and that's kind of what I was trying to figure out when I bought this Pocket 4K 3 years ago. So typically most people will suggest getting, again, cine lenses, Lumix lenses, or buying a Metabones adapter to EF lenses and using a bunch of lenses that way. But that's the route to go if you have the extra money to spend on an adapter like that or lenses, and there's nothing wrong with those lenses, they're great. But if you're on a minimal budget, what's something you could get that will deliver decently good results at a low price when it comes to lenses? And the answer is vintage lenses. I've enjoyed working with M42 lenses in the past, and you can get an adapter to MFT for around $40 or cheaper if you want to go cheaper on Amazon. A great place to start, ironically, is eBay. Now, as always, be careful when purchasing from eBay. But eBay, in my experience, has been pretty good at getting you refunds if someone scams you, like this guy in our Discord that bought a camera and got a brick shipped to him instead. These lenses can vary in price from around $25 to $200, but vintage lenses are a great place to start if you have a low budget and just need something to film with that isn't some cheap knockoff MFT lens from Amazon. These vintage lenses a lot of times have some great character to them, and you can get some really cool and interesting results, even though they aren't expensive. So I've suggested a couple to look for below to get started, but beyond that, do some research into some vintage lenses and find yourself ones that fit what you're trying to do. But it's a great place to start, and one like this Super Takumer, I believe as it's called, that's radioactive. We'll talk about this lens in another date. So after that, we have at most a total of about $100 to $200, depending on what the lens you want to go with. So what's next? Memory. So, what's the best thing to go with here with memory? You hear so many people talk about CFast cards, SD cards, and solid-state drives. Well, I'm sure most people would think go the SD card route to be cheaper. And that can be true on one level. So let's take a look at that. And I'm going to talk about two different directions you can go here. SD cards. Now, I've included some links below to SD cards that are BMP-CC 4K approved up to 4K DCI, BRAW 12:1 compression, up to 30 frames per second, which means that they will only work reliably at the lowest compression levels on the 4K, which is totally fine. In fact, this video I'm filming right now is filmed at 12:1 compression ratio. The one thing you might run into here is not being able to use a high frame rate, which, if you're not wanting to use anyways, it's totally acceptable place to start at 24 frames per second. In fact, I've kind of moved away from doing a lot of slow motion. A lot of filmmakers have. Just understand that BMD cameras will eat through storage pretty quickly, and you might be changing these out a good bit. So if you want to go with something smaller, just so you can start filming, even if it's in small bursts of stuff. In this lower range, a SD card can cost you around $17 for a 64 gigabyte, or around like $30 for 128 gigabytes. And 512 gigabytes for an SD card is around $110 if you go with these. So if you have an absolute bare minimum budget, it makes sense to get some of the smaller cards on this list, the smaller file size cards. And we've included, again, a list of these approved BMD SD cards in the description below. And one thing to note here is that Pocket 4Ks read-write speed. And this is how much you're going to be burning through per second, which equates to, then this is just a 12:1 compression ratio per second and per minute. So think about that. Now, if you are already thinking about getting a higher end SD card over 500 gigabytes, I'm going to stop you right there. At that point, it totally makes sense to just buy an SSD or a solid state drive, especially when at the time of this video, there are some Samsung T5 solid state drives that are $75 for 500 gigabytes. Typically when it's not on sale, they live around $80 to $95. To be honest, I would recommend getting these. That's significantly cheaper than the larger SD cards at $80, like when the other one's at 512 gigabytes for $110. Get the solid state drive. And with this, there are no limitations on what you can film to the Pocket 4K with a solid state drive. And of course, the reports, I'm sure if you've heard the T5 being canceled, which it kind of is, they're not making them anymore, but it's still, the demise of it is greatly exaggerated, and you can find them most of the time on Amazon or other places online. I've linked to them below, as well as a holder you might need to keep this the T5 card from swinging around on this camera. All right, so we've added our vintage lens. We've added some storage to this, and you're going to be coming out after this added from this section about $17 to $100, depending what card you go with. It could be a little bit more than that if you go for a bigger terabyte card or something. And add that to the lens, the vintage lens that you have, and you're around either $117 to $300, depending on which range you went. But now you have a lens, maybe multiple lenses, and some storage. The last thing you need to think about for this minimal setup is batteries. So with batteries, it's totally up to you whether or not you want to actually buy more. You can, totally rock this Canon LP-E6 type battery just fine. In fact, that's what I did for a few months after I bought mine, until I figured out some other solutions. You can even find some of these extra LP-E6 batteries for around $30 to $45 if you want to go with a non-third-party battery, of course, and there's nothing wrong with that. So the choice is up to you. If you're okay not having a ton of battery life in 20 to 30 minutes, typically with these are not great. There's absolutely no shame in it. I did it, go for it. Just work around your limitations, but you still get to work with this camera. Now, if you want a little extra juice, let's talk through some other options. Now, I'm obviously leaving cages and audio gear out of this video because in my opinion, it's not essential to filming with this camera. You can still learn how to film with this, make videos, and tell stories without any of that, and honestly, it'll make you a better filmmaker. But I've included some options below if you're interested in some good, affordable options on top of what we're talking about today. That being said, without a cage system, if you're going to be a bit limited with your battery setup because you don't have much to attach it to. So here are a couple options for you. Blackmagic actually has a battery grip for $245. Unfortunately, this does not always come with two batteries provided with it. So if you're trying to stay under $500 and you're only on the lower end of the budget, this may be an option for you. But honestly, I would go for V-mount batteries. Now, I know you typically see a lot of filmmakers attaching these onto rigs or attached to something on the camera, but there are a few different versions like this one that you can actually attach to the bottom of the camera. And this one in particular is around $238 if you want to go for it. But now you have a nice mounted battery, and you can get this for $238, and you don't have to buy extra batteries for it like the other Blackmagic design one. Now, there are some other options we've included below at a cheaper price point to this one as well, but using a V-mount battery like this can increase your battery life from minutes into hours. Look, guys, I've made this video to kind of show you that don't listen to everyone in the forums or all the different places that, oh, you need to add all these thousands of dollars of gear to use this camera properly. If you want to learn to use this camera, you can do it with this and get good results and learn how to use it before you spend a bunch of money on it. It's a great place to start. There is absolutely no shame in not having high-end gear, high-end lenses. Everyone starts from, the bottom at some point, and you work your way up. So don't let high price points or having to get, go research and get some vintage lenses hold you back from getting this camera and getting into it. If you really are interested in getting a cinema camera and you're really interested in getting to filming and videography, don't let anyone hold you back. But that's it for this video. If you liked this content, check out this video right here. I highly recommend it after watching this. It's a great video. great follow-up to this video, so be sure to check it out. But also let me know in the comments below if you guys have any questions about this setup or anything I've linked below. I'm always happy to help.